To me, she was my mum. There was no emotional warmth. I felt I wasn't close to my parents at all. I woke up one day and my whole torso was covered with these silvery red patches, later diagnosed as pityriasis. I was coming down with every infection. My sinuses were so bad that I couldn't breathe. I had excruciating headache every single day. I could barely move. I was so tired. Doctors couldn't help me. I even had to go on antidepressant. I had hit a brick wall and I was going downhill fast. So I took myself off to the library and I concluded, without any knowledge of nutrition, that I might have Candida overgrowth. Compared to how I was when I was 30, I have so much energy and so much happiness in my life, and it was helping my son as well with his eczema and his speech difficulties. For many of the patients that I meet, there is emotional trauma in that backstory that's impacted where they are right now. As long as you keep going, you're going to get to your health goals, and we're here as facilitators of that healing.
Hello, Marie. So today we have Marie Cherrett, who has been working with me for quite some time now as our original nutritional therapist and functional medicine practitioner at the Forbes Clinic. So thank you so much for coming on today, Marie, and agreeing to share your amazing healing story with us. Because actually, since we've been working together, I have known some of your story, and I knew it was awe-inspiring. I knew that you had healed your own chronic disease, and that was how you now, and through all your different trainings, now help to heal or help other people to heal their chronic disease. But having read your story in preparation for this interview, I actually had no idea how deep it went and how many different nuances and levels and stages you had to move through to get to where you are today. So thank you so much for coming on. Maybe we can go right back in time, Marie, and start with the early beginnings, where it all began.
Okay, it's lovely to be here, Anna. Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm really excited about sharing my story, actually. So, as with most therapists, I came into this work through my own health problems. So we understand that adverse childhood events can really significantly impact our nervous system, our stress response system in the body, and ultimately our immune system, which lies in the gut terrain. So I feel that my own childhood adverse event really did start the ball rolling for me, unfortunately downhill towards my chronic health problems, which I suffered from for many, many years. So let's start from the beginning. Just to give some backstory, I was born in Thailand to a Thai father, English mother. They had not a very happy relationship, unfortunately. They worked for all their lives, and I was brought up by a nanny. So I was brought up by this lovely lady who actually lived in with us. So she was like a mum to me. When I woke up in the morning, she was there. When I went to bed in the evening, she was there. So there were no days off. Yeah. And to me, she was my mum. Okay. And when we had to leave Thailand abruptly, when I was 9 years old, my mother she really hated Thailand. She didn't like my father's family and she couldn't wait to move. So we moved, and this was so devastating for me, as you can imagine, leaving the woman who I thought of as my mother, to come to England, to this alien place with people who I wasn't close to my parents at all, unfortunately. And I was with these two people who I couldn't talk to. I had to bury my sadness. I couldn't talk about it. No one asked me how I was doing. I understand they were having their own struggles, so I don't blame my parents for that. But here I was in this alien world. I had to catch up on schoolwork. I was quite behind, because even though I was bilingual, I knew English. I was actually in a Thai school learning Thai. So I had to catch up, which I did do in a couple of years, but it was a struggle. And of course, I missed my nanny, and I had to, cry myself to sleep, I suppose, and no one knew. I couldn't talk to anyone.
Did you have contact with her still?
No, my parents just completely cut off all contact. As far as they were concerned, she was an employee and that was it. and I don't know whether they knew that I was suffering, but no one asked me. Bless them,
Mm,
they didn't. They were old school, my parents. They didn't communicate with me in
mm.
that sort of way. There was no emotional warmth, I felt. But they were unhappy in their own marriage, so maybe they were tied up in their own thoughts and life.
And
And so,
your dad was from Thailand,
yes, that's
but
right.
your
Yeah,
mum wasn't from
my,
there.
my mum was English. My mum's
Right, she's
English. So when
English.
I say was, they're both deceased now. So,
Okay.
um, so through those teenage years that followed, my mum was still working, and she wasn't, by her own admission, she wasn't a great cook. She didn't like to cook. So most of the food that I was eating came out of packets. So I think, that's where my food addictions began, because there was a lot
Hmm.
of sweet stuff, there was a lot of sugar, there was a lot of processed food, processed drinks, and things like that. I don't really remember eating too many vegetables during that
Mm.
time. And that's how my life went. And the only saving grace in my teenage years was I I did karate training. My mum did get me involved in that, and eventually I became a black belt at age 18. So that was something.
Amazing. I didn't know that about you.
Don't mess with me. But anyway, yeah. So that was a saving grace for me, because otherwise I'd just be locked in my room, being away from my parents, because the atmosphere in the house wasn't very good, because they simply didn't get on. There was no arguing or anything like that, but there was deathly silences, and you could really cut the atmosphere with a knife. So around about that sort of time, around about 18, my father did eventually leave. My mother became happier, which was nice for me to see. But unfortunately, her happiness was quite short lived, because only a few years later, at the age of 65, she was diagnosed with Alzheimer's. So that was very, very sad. But however, during that time, that's when my bulimia developed. So no one knew about this. I wasn't diagnosed. My parents didn't know about this, but there was a lot in the news about bulimia, because I think at the time Princess Diana possibly had bulimia, and the press were talking about it. So I knew from reading all those clips that this sounds like what I had, because
This
I
was a
would,
thing. Mm.
yeah, I would take myself off to the bathroom after most meals and a purge, make myself vomit. I
Mm.
took laxatives, and it was my way of keeping in control of everything.
You were
Unbeknown to
17,
I was about 18 when all this came along.
18.
Yeah, the only person who knew about it was my boyfriend at the time, who was very supportive. He was a lovely, lovely guy, and he was only young, of course. But yeah, so that carried on for quite a few years. I developed a sinus issue, very chronic sinusitis, that went on for years as well. And it was around age 22, I think, that everything came to a head, when my sinuses were so bad that I couldn't breathe. I was a mouth breather. I couldn't sleep. My sinuses were so bad, and I was trying over the counter medication, which was making things worse actually.
Mm.
Helped in the moment, but my mucous membranes were swollen, and they were, I was in a lot of pain. I took myself off to the doctor, and the doctor prescribed a nasal inhaler, a
Mm.
steroid. And I took it, and I thought, oh my God, this is amazing. I can breathe. This was like a miracle for me. Okay. But the trouble is, no one warned me about steroids. And I just kept going back for repeat prescription after repeat prescription. And after about a year and a half on this, I started developing vaginal thrush on a regular basis, like it was there almost all the time, UTIs as well. So, I was never free of these things. They were always there. Sometimes they were a little bit better, and I could manage it. Other times I would have a flare, and I'd be in a lot of pain and a lot of discomfort.
Mm.
And that actually went on for about 15 years. But the penny dropped that the steroids are actually not doing me any good was when I woke up one day, and actually my whole torso was covered with these silvery little patches, so silvery red patches, which was later diagnosed as pityriasis, which is actually a fungal infection. And at that point, the doctor said to me, well, you shouldn't have been on your inhaler for so long, because it's a steroid. You should have only been on it for a few weeks. And
The
it's
steroid
probably,
dropped the immune system, allowed the functional infection to gain
yeah,
traction.
absolutely. My immune system was so suppressed at that point that I was coming down with every infection. I was always had colds and flus, and my UTIs were getting worse. They were becoming more chronic, I felt. Yeah, so that's how that began. And of course, at that point, I was at my lowest. I could no longer do my karate. I also was teaching kids karate up to that point, and I had my own kids club, and I had to give that up as well because the steroids did something to me. They changed my nervous system, and we
Mm.
understand that they can impact the stress response system in the
Mm.
body. And I began to get agoraphobia and fears that I know that I previously didn't
Yeah.
have. I was a bit of a daredevil before that. I used to love fairground rides, and I used to love going on simulators and pretending that I was flying upside down, and all of these things, all of these
Adrenaline
amazing.
seeking, thrill
Yeah,
seeking.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
adrenaline junkie, I was.
Mm.
But after that, I had a panic attack actually whilst I was in one of the simulators. And that was when at the height of my steroid use, and I thought, well, this isn't normal. And after that, I was frightened to go out. I became nervous about everything.
And this was
I
what, early
couldn't.
20s?
This was early 20s,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And of course, doctors couldn't help me at that point because they were just giving me, suppressive treatments and band-aids. No one could help me. I even had to go on antidepressants for a short while because that's what, the doctor gave me. And
Because of the panic attacks. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, for panic attacks. And so this went on for about 15 years. During that time, probably at the tail end of that time, I was also diagnosed with fibromyalgia as well. And a miracle happened. I fell pregnant at age 30, with my son. And even though I was very unhealthy, I felt that I had quite a healthy pregnancy. My pregnancy was going on okay until the very end. So I was in labour for 37 hours before they had to do an emergency C-section because I just wasn't dilating. And my son was in distress, so they had to do an emergency C-section. After my son was born, unfortunately, he wasn't a healthy boy, and because I didn't know anything about health at the time, I had not done any training in nutrition. I knew nothing about nutrition. I was still what I would call a junk food addict. I was eating all sorts of bad food, sugar, pre-packed meals. I remember my partner at the time, we'd go into a supermarket and we'd agree, he'd go off that way and I'd go off that way and get our 7 microwave meals for the week each. You go off and get yours and I'll go off and get mine.
Gosh.
So that's how it was, and
Wow.
we'd
Complete
be,
other end of the spectrum to where you are now.
oh, totally. Yeah, 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 like chalk and cheese.
Amazing.
Yeah. So, when I was pregnant with my son, I was on aspartame, which is a toxin, a neurotoxin, and poison in its own right. And I,
And
I
a
was,
sweetener that's found in everything these days.
yeah, it is. And I was eating all sorts of bad food. I wasn't a healthy eater at all at that point. So it's no surprise that my son was sadly unhealthy. You can't be an unhealthy mother and give birth to a healthy child. I don't think that's possible. But certainly my son, he was riddled with eczema from top to toe. He's seemed to be hitting his milestones up to age 1, but after that he stopped talking for 2 years. And I can only blame myself because I didn't know. I didn't know about everything, that I should have been doing that I wasn't doing, or perhaps not doing certain things that I was doing. And I can blame myself about the diet, that's for sure, because, I know that aspartame is a neurological poison. And, my own microbiome must have been really, terrible, in a terrible state. Um, so I wasn't healthy. So I still feel very, very guilty about it now. But,
You didn't
it is what
know.
it is.
You didn't know. And
I
you had
didn't know.
and you had no guidance.
I had no guidance at that point
Yeah.
in
So you
time.
can't blame yourself. I hear what you're saying in terms of cause and effect,
Mm,
but
Yeah, absolutely. And I tell myself that every day, you know, that it's something that we all had to live through, and maybe there was a lesson in it, which I think there was. In the early days when my son was young, my own health really, really struggled. My chronic fatigue got worse. I had daily headaches, like excruciating headaches, and I was taking paracetamol every single day, four a day actually. I could barely move because I was so tired. You know, it felt like dragging along a ball and chain around my ankle. I was so tired, and my mood was terrible. You know, I was very short tempered. I was very depressed, and I realised that I had to do something. So this was before the internet. So I took myself off to the library. I did a lot of research, and I concluded, without any knowledge at all of nutrition, that I might have Candida overgrowth. So I put
Wow, back in the day, you didn't have Google.
no Google, no. And I put myself on a low, oh, no sugar, no refined sugar diet anyway. But it wasn't a perfect diet, you know. I still wasn't eating the vegetables that I should have been doing, and but my health did sort of incrementally improve, which was good. But I hit a plateau after a few years, and I thought, well, you know, I'm not improving, so I need help.
But
So I
Marie,
opened the
can
yellow
I just
pages.
ask you,
Mm,
sorry, how did you make that jump from, you'd had no guidance, you'd had to do
mhm.
everything on your own your whole life, and you were a junk food addict. How did you make that jump to say, I need to fix, I can't rely on the doctors anymore because they can't do it for me. Do you remember that switch, that transition?
I don't, but I think desperation was a lot to do with it because
Mm.
I had hit a brick wall and I was
Yeah.
going downhill fast, and I knew that I had to do some research. So I got a few books from the
Mm.
library, and some of the Candida overgrowth symptoms seemed to mirror my symptoms. So I thought, well, this is what I've got. I've got to put myself on a no sugar, no refined sugar diet, and I didn't eat much fruit either at that point. So I began to feel a bit better, but I hit a plateau, and I knew that I needed further help. So I looked in the yellow pages, and this lovely lady's name popped up, Veronica, nutritional therapist in Bournemouth. So I visited her, and she was absolutely amazing, and she taught me so much about health and about diet. Absolutely wonderful, and she really did get me on the path back to health. And it wasn't an easy transition because I still had these food addictions. You know, I was still battling these chronic health symptoms that I was experiencing. So it was, you know, maybe a couple of steps forward, one step back for me. But eventually, I felt well, and I had my energy mostly return. I still was at that particular point in time, I was still getting the chronic UTIs occasionally, maybe
Mm.
once a month. I was still getting a bit of thrush.
Mm.
Um, but nevertheless, I was improved.
Mm.
And it was actually Veronica that helped me train as a nutritional therapist,
Mm.
because I said, this is amazing what this has done for my health. And it was helping my son as well with his eczema and his speech difficulties. You know, his health was improving with her knowledge. Um, and she recommended that I train with a Dr. Plaskett, who's a naturopath and a biochemist. So I joined his course, and eventually his course was upgraded to a degree course at the time. It was the Thames Valley University, which has now changed names to the University of West London. So I completed that course, and I got my degree, which I was really very chuffed about. And yeah, so he very much taught a very naturopathic sort of outlook on how nutritional medicine should work, and that's how I look through that lens now when I help patients and clients through
Mm.
that very naturopathic lens.
So
Um,
what did you do, Marie, for your own health? Talk us through what you did with Veronica to get you to that
okay,
place of finally feeling well. What did you do?
okay. So she had me do some testing actually, which showed that I had very low levels, almost no growth whatsoever of beneficial bacteria. I had a couple of parasites as well as the candida. So I was riddled with this
So
overgrowth.
you were correct in your self-diagnosis. You had the candida.
I did have the Candida. Yes, I was correct there. But I
Mm.
also had parasites and I had no good bacteria. And of course, left to my own devices, I would have still perhaps been in that chronic state of having no good bacteria because I wasn't eating any vegetables
You
or
hadn't eaten anything to feed the good bacteria for such a long time.
exactly, yeah. I
And the
didn't know
chronic
anything about
stress.
that. Yeah,
Yeah.
but she helped me understand. So she actually helped me, get into juicing and get into smoothies and things like that, which I feel were game changers for my own health and my son's health.
Mm.
So yeah, that was wonderful. And then later, I did do a certification in functional medicine as well, just to, you know, wrap all that up. So that was great.
And how would you
So yeah,
describe the difference between what you had done through the nutritional medicine and the functional medicine, just to help people understand
yeah.
that
So functional
transition?
medicine very much looks at the root cause. I mean, Veronica did work from that basis as well. But of course, in functional medicine, we don't guess. We have testing as well, which can really reveal what's going on deep down
Mm.
in the body.
Hmm.
Because I don't think that when I work with patients now, I don't think many understand what functional medicine really is. They think that it's just a natural alternative for the band-aid treatments that they're
Mm.
getting from doctors. They don't perhaps understand straight away
Mm.
that we actually really take a deep dive into the very root causes of what's causing our health problems.
Mm.
And certainly, when I started studying functional medicine, that became more apparent to me. And even though I'm a nutritional therapist, largely, the functional medicine taught me that, the nervous system actually, regulating the nervous system was one of the most important things to getting
Mm.
well, which is something that perhaps was overlooked a little bit with what Veronica was doing because she was just
Mm.
when I say
It was on
just
the
a nutritional
nutrition.
therapist, she was very
The
good,
focus was the
concentrating
food
on
and
the nutrition.
supplements. Mm.
Yeah. And the nutrition, of course, very important, but
Mm.
I think alongside that, nervous system regulation, I think that is really the
Mm.
key to getting well.
Certainly.
And certainly that's one of the things that perhaps I'm still struggling with because of the steroid overuse. My nervous system has not been quite the same as it was
Mm.
at one time.
You put it down
And
more to that than your adverse childhood events, because that's the foundation you had was very poor.
oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
No
absolutely.
nurture, no security, no safety,
Yeah,
abandonment, neglect.
yeah, yeah,
That's
very
not going to
much so.
do much good for your nervous system as you grow and for
Not
the long term.
Yeah, absolutely. That's true. Now looking back, I can see looking along that timeline how I've got to where I am today,
Mm.
with my struggles. But again, very grateful for that journey because I've learnt so much and
Mm.
I'm able to help other people as well through their
Absolutely.
journey. Yeah.
And I think the thing that is so beautiful about your story, Marie, is like we say, it's not just that you were poorly educated around food, so you had loads of junk food. There's that deep emotional aspect to your story that you had to navigate at the same time. So when you were saying that you were working with Veronica and it was still hard because you had the food addiction, she's telling you to do this and that and the other, but you still had the food addictions, which, yes, is physical, but it's also very psychological, isn't it? The comfort foods, etc.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah,
you really
absolutely.
understand, and certainly we've been working together for several years. There's rarely a patient that we discuss that we only focus on the physical. We always talk about it in the context of the wider sphere of their lives.
Yeah, so for many of the patients that I meet, they do have a backstory, and there is, emotional trauma in that backstory somewhere that's impacted where they are right now in their health journey. So that's very significant, and they may not realize that themselves. But
Mm.
once we start doing work, and we have some amazing practitioners in the clinic that can help them with that journey and addressing the past
Mm.
and the trauma that they've had to go through. So yeah.
You can't discount it. And what I often explain to patients is the root issue can often be psycho-emotional in nature,
Yeah.
trauma, mindset, life events, etc. But obviously that's a bit of a journey to resolve these matters. That's not just a quick overnight fix, is it? Even
No.
with the best therapists, this takes time. So we do the nutrition, the physical, the supplementation, the detox work. And even if the root cause is more emotional in nature, we can make such profound changes to the way that someone feels and their symptom journey, even without doing that. But what I explain to people is unless you address this at the same time, in tandem, you're going to be staying on that quite rigid nutrition supplement protocol, for the foreseeable future. You need to do this in tandem so that we can get you back into balance for a more permanent solution for the long run.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with that.
Yeah.
So, the body can't heal in survival mode. And if we've got that trauma going on in the background, the healing is either going to be short-lived or it's going to be very restricted. We're not going to be able to help them fully. So that's for sure. Yeah,
Mm.
absolutely needs addressing. And certainly in my own journey, I'm still addressing that side of things
Yeah. That's the
now.
longer term. That's the lifelong journey, isn't it? To
Yeah,
rewrite childhood trauma.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, but I'm getting there.
You are. I mean, you are such a sturdy, grounded, wise practitioner on the team. You are certainly, like you say, we're all human. Everyone, has their human things that we go through. This is normal, but actually, you've created a really amazingly strong foundation for yourself, particularly given, everything we've heard in terms of what you've come from. But Marie, what I would love you to unpick a little bit more for those that are listening is the bulimia side. Because actually, in our field, eating disorders are some of the hardest conditions to work with and to manage. And
Yeah.
you've managed to reverse it completely and actually develop a healthy relationship with food. I think a lot of people that haven't been through eating disorders don't understand it. So maybe
No.
you could go back, you touched on it earlier. Maybe you could go back to that point. I think you were about 17, you said, when it
When
first
it all
reared
started.
its
Yeah.
head.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, for us, it might be quite obvious that correlation with abandonment and neglect and all the things that you went through and then developing an eating disorder, but it's not going to be so obvious to people that don't know about these things. So maybe you could share with us the connection that you drew, on the years of reflection that you've had and the work that you do. What is that connection between what you went through as a child and developing
Okay.
bulimia?
Yeah, I think, looking back, I think it was that sense of being out of control and having things, my life moved on, but I wasn't in control of that. Like moving from
Mm,
Thailand away from my nanny, I felt so out of control at that point, and I think that's where the seeds were sown for the
mm,
bulimia. But yeah, bulimia is very much about having that sense of control, and I think it is a very long journey. There's an
mm,
element of OCD in there as well, having to be
mm,
perfect. That's
mm,
another thing that comes from my own experience, where my parents felt that perhaps I wasn't perfect enough, and I
mm.
had to be perfect, or this was the only way that I could be perfect, unfortunately. But yeah,
That's
that's
so
that's what I draw
sad.
from my own. Yeah, so it's
It's
very much, rather than it's not just it's not certainly not a physical
no.
disorder on its own. There's definitely a lot of psycho-emotional work to be done, and for me, I think finding things that I was good at, finding things that made me feel whole, was really all
Mm,
part of the journey. And I
mm,
think I would advise, that for our patients who are suffering from eating disorders, that they need to find something in their life where they can feel proud of themselves and to be
mm,
the best versions of themselves. I think that's
mm,
really, really key.
mm. Amazing advice, actually, because I didn't know that you had suffered from eating disorders. I don't think that's something that had come up. Maybe you had mentioned it, but I didn't remember that about you from when we first spoke through briefly about your story. But
Yeah, well, there's a lot of shame. I think there's a lot of
yeah,
shame with eating disorders, and it's not something we want to talk about.
no,
Even my best friends don't know about this. It is very, very difficult to
really.
talk about.
Wow,
And
Marie.
yeah, and even now, you say I'm through it, and I think I am, in the most part through it. But there is always that element,
Yeah,
even when I'm like enjoying my food, say at Christmas or whatever, there's always that nagging thought, and I'd never do what I used to do. I'd never take myself off to the bathroom and make myself vomit or anything like that. But I'm always questioning, oh gosh, what have I done? And then I
mm,
might overcorrect the next day. I might be
mm.
super good the next day. So that element of OCD and that overthinking it and that needing to be perfect is still there. We
That's
may
the
never
deeper
erase it
journey.
completely.
That's
Yeah.
the deeper journey. That's
Yeah.
the harder thing because obviously this was in your formative years when
Mm,
your nervous system, when your beliefs, when your identity were all forming.
yeah.
So, and
Yeah.
obviously food is such a central part of what we do every single day. So it is hard, isn't it, to
It
rewrite that
is.
completely. But to have broken the cycle completely the way you did is
Mm,
admirable and just shows that you did both elements, the physical work, the nutritional work, but also that psycho-emotional work. And
yeah.
what I find so sad, and you touched on it, and we see this in our patient stories as well, is every child comes into this life expecting love, knowing love, because that's why we love babies, why we love children. They're so loving. So they only know love. They just expect love. And so when that abandonment and that neglect comes in, like you say, the child mind then starts to ask the question, well, it must be my fault. What can I do to gain their love? What can I do? It must be something wrong with me. So let me make myself more right, more correct, more perfect. Let me improve myself. And then maybe I'll get that attention, that love, that belonging.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And it doesn't work that way at all. And that chasing validation, that can really dysregulate the nervous system even more. I think we
Mm.
really do need to do that inner work, self-reflection. And for me, I haven't found someone that can help me right to the end. But we have within us the tools to really search ourselves and our soul and do that work ourselves. We do need that help from other people as well,
Mm.
though,
Mm.
and that's what I found. That's why I don't think that I've quite completed that journey yet.
No one is 100% healed. No human. No human is 100% resolved,
No.
100% healed, because that's the human journey, isn't it?
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
something I feel very strongly about is that people shouldn't judge where someone currently is at because you never know their story. You never know where they come
Absolutely.
from. You never know what they've been through. You haven't lived it yourself. So all we can do is compare ourselves to ourselves, no one else. So
That's
look where
right.
you
Yeah.
were and look where you are now. And you're 60, Marie.
Yeah, I'm 60.
You're 60 and look at you. My goodness, if I look like that when I'm 60, I'll be over the moon.
You will.
So yeah, it's really an amazing journey you've been on. But yeah, it's just further testament to the point, the fact that that psycho-emotional journey is the longer journey and the lifelong
Absolutely.
journey. And I don't know how you see this, Marie, but I feel that's a big part of you coming to the Forbes Clinic, which is integrative medicine. And we have a really strong focus on the mind body medicine and the spiritual and the energy medicine. So, not just the physical at all. That probably
Yeah,
that's been
yeah.
part of your journey, thinking in a different way as well, would you say?
Yeah, definitely. And I've had the pleasure of working with some of our therapists and working, with them to help me. And I think they've definitely furthered my journey. It's been a real awakening joining the Forbes Clinic. And I'm not there yet, obviously, and I may never get there. But you know what? I feel amazing compared to how I used to feel. And even in myself, that, that need to be perfect, I can let go
Yeah.
of that a little bit more now.
Yeah.
And some of our therapists at the clinic really have helped me to see that and achieve that, which is, it's just amazing. Yeah, it feels so good.
Thank you. And I think that notion of getting there, I'm not there yet, getting there. Where is this there? And actually,
I know.
there isn't, is there? I mean, my
There is.
perspective is that we are here in this body on this earth for learning and growth. So it's about where we
That's right.
started and being on that journey of learning and growth. So I don't think there is a there. I don't think we end up on our deathbed going, oh, awesome. I, hit
But I never
perfection.
got
I
there.
became the ideal human. It's about what we learned, doesn't it? And what we
Yeah,
grew through.
absolutely.
So,
Because if we
so
if we ever got there, wherever there is, there would be no growth. There would be no learning. Absolutely. You've hit the nail on the head there, Anna. For sure,
And
yeah.
I think it's interesting. I think for me, it's wonderful doing these interviews with our practitioners and our therapists in the team, because you realize how deep everyone has gone and how much everyone has suffered. And actually, there is a reason why natural health practitioners become natural health practitioners, which is a 360-degree looking at health, because actually they've been through it. They know what our patients are going through, and they have found that roadmap back to recovery, back to health, back to balance. That's certainly true in your
Absolutely.
case, Marie.
Yeah, yeah, because compared to how I was when I was 30, it's like night and day. I feel so well, and I have so much energy and so much happiness in my life as well. And this is what I'd like
Wow.
to share with patients, actually. I always try to explain things in a way that, patients understand, and without being patronizing. I always say, we're on a timeline. We're all on a journey between, perfect health, which is A, and I don't think any of us have ever started there, even at birth, towards Z, which is, chronic disease. And we're all on that timeline. And, it's about turning ourselves around and retracing those steps back to health.
No.
And when patients come to see us, people like me and our practitioners are there to help these people turn around. And that can be the biggest struggle because,
Yeah.
after all, it's like turning a big ship, isn't it? It can take
Yeah.
time. And once we've turned ourselves around and we can retrace our steps back to health, we
Mm.
know that we're on that journey, we're on the right journey. And even those steps actually can be, they can be faltering at times. There can be like a couple of steps forward, one step back. But as long as you keep going, you're going to get to your health goals. And we're here as facilitators of that healing. We're not going to do the healing for them. And I tell patients and clients that, they're the ones doing the healing, but we're there just to guide them, to point them in the right direction and to pick them up when they falter, which,
Mm.
invariably people do. And we're there with them for the whole of the journey if they
Mm.
wanted. But the fact that
Mm.
they've even come to us, they're ready to turn that ship around, as
Mm.
it were. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a really, really important point. The thing I always say to people is, we're not here to tell you what to do. We've moved away from that didactic, patriarchal model set up by modern medicine, whereby doctor knows best and doctor tells you what to do. Actually, this is such an interactive co-journey, isn't it, with what we do? And
Yeah.
it's very much about what I always say to people is actually where I want you to end up through this process is for you to learn how to trust yourself.
Yeah,
Learn how to tune in with your
absolutely.
body and trust yourself. And yes, they need education. Most people need that, the education. We needed the education back in the day. You need to learn the basic rules around, because there's so much misinformation. There's so much misunderstanding. There's such a lack of guidance like you experienced in your youth, so people don't, and there's so much processed food around. So people don't know. A lot of people don't know. So yes, we need to learn the basic rules. We need to have that education first. If there are mental, emotional blocks like you had, through the bulimia in your youth, to getting us to that healthy place. We need to navigate that as well. But that's what I say, that's what is that amazing completion of your story, is really you had to navigate both. It wasn't just lack of education, lack of guidance around food. It wasn't a simple case of, Marie, stop eating that and actually just start eating this. You had to go through a real process of learning through the body and the mind to get to where you got to. So there was something else I was going to oh yes, I just thought we might touch on the actual way that you work in clinic. So we all work in an integrative medicine approach in the clinic, and taking that 360-degree perspective to health. But within that, we all have our own little niches, and we always know who the right practitioner is to refer to for a particular person, because actually we are not disease-centered practitioners, we are person-centered practitioners. So we're not treating the disease, we are treating the person. So it doesn't matter, 10 people could have exactly the same condition. We're going to work with them differently because they are 10 different individuals. So I thought I might mention that the people that actually in clinic we refer to you as the diet queen, because you are, you really take that deep dive. I guess because you've done it for so long as well, Marie. You've been doing it. I mean, you started 2009, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Your nutrition journey.
Yeah, that's when I qualified.
That's when you qualified. So you were doing it before that, and you did the Plaskett work, which I know Dr. Plaskett's work from having worked in cancer. The Plaskett therapy is well renowned in the cancer field, and then you did the American training in functional medicine university, and the American training was always ahead of where we were in the UK as well. So very highly trained and lots of experience, but obviously you are a mother, you have been through that journey with a child. That makes a difference as well. So I'm always so confident being able to refer babies and children, because that's a whole other skill, isn't it? Actually navigating all the complexities and difficulty of getting good nutrition into a child is a whole other level. But you really, really, really deep dive on the nutrition front and do that hand holding to help people with the daily habits and navigating the stumbling blocks on the lifestyle front, but also that mental, emotional blocks as well that you appreciate. So yes, the diet queen. I don't think you knew that before today, that we referred to you as the diet queen.
But I'm very flattered, yeah. Great
So
name.
yes, if anyone really needs that, deeper dive on the nutrition front, that's definitely your bag. And the gut healing, I always refer to you for the stool test interpretation and the gut program. And you've also got a bit of a specialty in female hormones, particularly around the menopause. You've written an ebook on the subject, haven't you, helping people to manage the menopause through nutrition?
Yes, yep. I've written a recipe ebook, and I'm on to another book that I'm writing as well on midlife health for women and how they can, empower themselves to thrive through midlife rather than struggle. So, yeah.
Amazing, which is exactly what you have demonstrated, and you walk your talk. That's what I love about you, Marie. You really walk your talk. So thank you for being you. Thank you for your journey. Thank you for sharing with us so generously today, Marie. And thank you for all your work and help at the clinic. You are really, a pillar for us in the clinic in terms of the work that you do with patients. So thank you so much.
Oh.